This is Hot Mike.
Hot Mike.
On the networks of WDAY.
WDAY.
Here's Dom Izzo.
Friday morning edition of Hot Mike rolling on here on WDAY Extra. Sam Getzinger filling in for Dom Izzo. I promised in hour number 2, we're talking a lot of high school hockey, pro hockey, and college hockey coming up over the next hour. Happy to welcome in our next guest to start off this 10 o'clock slate. Grant Paranica, the head coach of Grand Forks Central Hockey, the defending state champions. They have been off to a stellar start to the year. Grant, thanks for taking some time this morning. Hopefully you're staying warm, and it's been a fun start to the year, hasn't it?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It sure has. We've had we've had a little bit of ups and downs, but more ups than downs so far. So we're happy with the way things are going, and hopefully we can continue.
And take that any day of the week. More ups than downs. That's the name of the game as you go throughout the season. Before we talk about the year in total, I want to go back to Tuesday and get your reaction to that game against Moorhead. A top team from North Dakota, top team from Minnesota. What was the mindset from you and your squad going into that game, and then to see how things played out? That was pretty fun to watch.
Well, I think, I'd like to say something fancy and technical, but we didn't really think about that very much. For us, it was just I guess in a way, on one hand, it was a big game, and on the other hand, it was just another hockey game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like two defending state championship teams playing each other. That's kind of a big deal. But on the other hand, it was just two high school hockey teams playing, and a bunch of kids on the ice, kind of doing the best they can. So
right.
My take on the game, I guess, for us going into it, it was more about us in the locker room, and just like I always talk about, playing to a standard, and I think that's a little bit of a buzzword right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something we strive for in practice and in our games. There's a minimum level that you have to compete at, and we try and get our kids to that. And I think the other thing is for us is playing to an identity, like not trying to be something we're not. Like we're not a Corvette, we're a 70s Chev square body, and that's kind of what we got to be, a little rough around the edges, and big heart, and we'll get you there, try and get you there in the long run. We don't care if we have a few door dings in the parking lot at the grocery store,
Well, I know you are a calm, cool, and collected guy on the bench. You guys had the lead going into that third period, and then, of course, Moorhead makes that big run and eventually push things into overtime. Nolan Mardo had the game-tying goal with 90 seconds left to go into overtime. When Moorhead was going on that run in the third period, what were you telling your team after they took the lead?
Well, just to stay with it, our game, we had played a good game up to that point, and Moorhead, they're just tremendous at finding that open ice and spreading the ice out. I guess jumping up with the rush, their D jump up real well, and they move the puck so well. They're all skilled players, and we thought we'd had played a good game to that point. Like I think we had a bit of an advantage, if anything, in checking. We checked real tightly, and we had good support players around the puck. And it was just a matter of, hey, stick with what we're doing. We were having success at it, and there's no need to panic at that point. We're still in basically a one-goal hockey game.
Right. Of course, you get the OT winner. Spicer was able to get it done in overtime. I was leaving the rink after the game, and I could hear what sounded like quite the party going on in the locker room. I know it's North Dakota and Minnesota, and it doesn't mean much for state rankings, but this win definitely meant a lot for your team, didn't it?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a rivalry there, and sometimes I think maybe we don't get the respect we deserve, and it just kind of says to me in the big picture that there's some good hockey players over across the river too, right?
Yeah.
And
yep.
We have a ton of respect for Moorhead and the Minnesota programs, and we love playing them, and we work with them in our high performance programs, and in theirs, and they're great colleagues, and they're good to work with, and that's kind of helped improve our hockey somewhat, and I hope we've kind of helped to raise the level of their play too, and at the end of the day, that's what you want to do. We're not the end of the food chain.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're just a step along the way for a lot of kids, and we want to do the best we can for for the kids that we've got at those age groups.
Let's talk about the year as a whole. If I'm not mistaken, I believe you guys are 14 games into it right now, coming off of a state title run last year where you got the 30th in program history. How has this team handled having the target back on their backs this season?
Yeah, I think pretty well. I mean, we don't. We just try and take it one game at a time and focus on those things that we just talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Playing to a standard and playing to our identity and sticking with that. Maybe not try to block out, not listen to the fluff and
Right.
everything that's kind of talked about it. But we have struggled a few times too, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's a good thing. Some of our kids have been put in a little adversity, and they have to answer to that challenge, and it helps them grow as a player.
You guys have had 6, I believe, out-of-state opponents this season from across the river in Minnesota. What was the mindset and scheduling to get those Minnesota teams in the mix? Because it's some pretty good competition you guys are going up against.
Yeah, well, we've got a lot of seniors in the lineup this year, so we've
Mm-hmm.
had an older team and having some success last year with, them being juniors. We were hoping to get some games where we could really be challenged, and we really found that. We
Yeah.
went up to War Road,
Yeah.
and they kind of gave us a lesson in how to play a little bit there. And now with Moorhead, obviously a quality team. I think they're number one or number two in Double A, and
Mm-hmm.
and then we faced Bemidji too, another Double A team, and they're a good hockey club. Yeah, I think the idea was that we'd want to be challenged as much as we could. Not that there's no challenge over here, but
Right.
it's kind of stimulating, I think, too, to the kids to be able to play other teams that you don't see all the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yeah, no doubt
Different
about that.
players, different skills, different players, different philosophies, and I think that helps them grow as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned it. A lot of returners back on this year. Of course, you lost some pretty good seniors from last year's state championship squad, but there's a lot of guys back in the lineup that are familiar names that have been around for the last couple of seasons now. Is there anything different about this group, play style wise or off the ice compared to last year?
Well, it's kind of the same group, so
Yeah.
maybe a
Mhm.
little more seasoned, and they've taken the new. We've got some sophomores that have been doing extremely well for us as well on the back end, and then up front too. So they've kind of taken them under their wing, and we let our seniors kind of lead in the locker room and off the ice, and as long as they're directing them in the right way, and we have all the kids buying in, I think nothing really changed. I think that's part of our standard is this is kind of how we operate and this is how we behave. And like we said, it gives us success a little bit more often
Right.
than not. So
I want to talk about some of the guys on your team. Again, Grant Paranica from Grand Forks Central joining us here on this Friday morning. I want to start with the goaltenders because you got 2 that are really good, Weston Nielsen and Rylan Berg. Dean and I were talking about this during the game. It seems like on a year-to-year basis, you either have too many good goalies or you don't have any at all. And you guys are in the category of you got quite a few really good goalies, don't you?
yeah, we sure do, and both of them are they're battling daily, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it serves to make them both better goaltenders, and they work hard at it. They support each other, and they've got a competition going every day, and when one kind of wins out a little bit, I guess if I can even call it that, when they win out a little bit, then that kind of only spurs the other guy to, the other goaltender to kind of pick up his game
Right.
or puts him in a little adversity, and that's a good thing for him to face, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if they're planning to play on and play at higher levels, you're going to run into those situations, and anytime you can, get a little experience at it, so that you're not so uncomfortable in it when you move on, I think that's a good thing.
Another guy I wanted to ask you about is sophomore Nolan Mardo. Him on that second line with Gavin Walkenfuss and Rylan Spicer is really fun to watch. Is Nolan a kid you knew that was coming up and you kind of had your eyes on him, or did he pop up out of nowhere?
No, he was a special player all along, and I think he took a few games to kind of find himself at the high school level. Bigger, stronger, a little older kids, but he's really kind of finding his game now and coming into his own. And he's clipping along at three, even maybe even 4 points a game or 3+ at least. So he's been terrific. That's he's a phenomenal talent, right? Like he's really poised with the puck, and when the game's on the line, like he's a competitor as well too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, all good things, and I see a future for him the way
Yeah,
he's playing.
there's no doubt. Of course, he had those 2 goals against Moorhead, the game-tying
Yeah.
goal in the third period as well with 90 seconds left. Pretty impressive, and one at the end of the second period as well. One more before I let you go, Grant. You've seen North Dakota high school hockey throughout the year. Thoughts on where things are at right now, especially on the East region? What have you noticing this season from the rest of the state?
I think we're in a good place. The East region, I don't know if East region in particularly. I know we're a little stronger in the East this year,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we're in a pretty good place. Like I think we've come a long ways in the past 7, 8, 9 years. We're continuing to grow. We still do kind of suffer from losing kids to out of state programs. Which kind of hurts. It
Right.
does. We're a small state, 20 high schools total. So
Mm-hmm.
we missed 10 kids, and that's a big number for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's still kind of an issue for us. And as we've been coming along and growing our game and getting better, I think more and more kids are kind of starting to realize that maybe that's not an option or a good option for me. Maybe I should be staying here, like kind of a you can get there from here attitude. And
Exactly.
I think some of our kids with the success they've had coming out of high school, they can start to see that.
Yeah, no doubt. And you guys got a couple of players over there as well that hopefully can make the jump to the next level and get it done from the state of North Dakota. That'd be cool to watch. Grant, I appreciate you coming on this morning. We'll let you go. I know you got to get busy or get ready for a busy weekend coming up. Thanks for joining us, and best luck to the rest of the season.
Thanks much for having me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Grant Paranica, the head coach of Grand Forks Central, joining us here on this Friday morning, coming off of their big 5-4 overtime win against Moorhead. I was at that game. Dean Wilson and I were doing that here for our North Dakota, Minnesota high school hockey game of the week. Dean and I were walking out of the rink on Tuesday looking at each other like that was one of the better high school hockey games that we have seen at least ever or in a long time. It was really impressive for both teams. Grand Forks Central, I was curious how they were going to skate with the Moorhead Spuds team coming off of a state title run with all of the tremendous talent that they had. I was curious how Central was going to hold up. I know they're number 1 in North Dakota, depending on who you ask, I should say. But they went stride for stride with them, connected on their passes just like Moorhead did, and they scored the big goals when it counted. It was impressive. And I've seen a lot on social media, online, of people dogging on the Moorhead Spuds after that loss. I don't think you can. It's a pretty solid team. They're still my pick to win the entire thing over in the MSHSL in Class 2A. Things didn't go their way on Tuesday. That's hockey. And not every year can you win every single game. That's just how it works. And there's a human element to everything. Maybe that played a factor. I don't know. They looked pretty good on Tuesday. Grand Forks Central just got one more goal than Moorhead did. That's all it was in overtime. It was a good game. And Central looks like the real deal. Really, really legitimate contenders, as they are every year, to defend their title from a season ago. So we will see what happens. State hockey tournament coming up the last weekend of February. Looking forward to that one. Always one of my favorite times of the year. Grand Forks Central back at it tomorrow. They got Devil's Lake. They were supposed to have a game yesterday against Bemidji. That one got postponed due to the weather and how cold it was, but that has been rescheduled to February 6th. So once they get to that game, Grand Forks Central will have played 7 Minnesota teams, the defending state champs in Class A in East Grand Forks and 2A in Moorhead. They also played Warroad and Detroit Lakes. They played East Grand Forks twice, and then they'll have Bemidji out of a difficult Section 8, the same one that Moorhead's in, coming up in February. So Grand Forks Central, keep an eye on them. They look pretty good. All right, we're due for a break. When we come back, let's get you a Wolves and Wild update. And a reminder for you, Brad Schlossman joining us at 10:35 to talk all things UND hockey. That's coming up when we come back on this Friday morning edition of Hot Mic.